The Gifted pulls out all the stops. Well, most of the stops in an effects-laden episode that wraps up this season's storylines. We've got action. We've got emotional cheese. We've got a heavily foreshadowed sacrifice. But most unexpected at all was the surprising arrival of Doc Brown at the end. No, not really. Though, kinda. It's the season finale and possible series finale of The Gifted. Season 2, Episode 16. oMens. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review of The Gifted. So yes, of course, spoiler, all of the spoilers will be coming up shortly. Alright, so it's the end. Big final episode, waiting to see how all of these storylines were going to come up. And I think for the most part, a satisfying conclusion. There was some great action. They used effects. There was some great movement. There was also a lot of real cheesy, dragged out kind of and heavily foreshadowed moments. So, I mean, little plus, a little minus, but I think overall, wrapping things up, I think they did a good job. I think they gave us mostly what we were looking for in kind of action-wise scenes. We got to see encounters with the Purifiers. John got a little bit of revenge. We get to sort of wrap up the whole Reva bit. And yeah, so I mean, there was a lot of satisfying, I think, moments that were provided in with this show. With this episode. So, let's kick things off with flashback sequences. Really, this is our Reed storyline being heavily foreshadowed. And I gotta say, starting things off, jumping back in a way, if we are wrapping up our show here, back sort of at the beginning of the current trials, the whole 715 attack, I thought was actually a good way to sort of wrap up the storylines, to sort of bring everything together, showing the sort of little arc that the Strucker family has gone through since the very beginning up until this point. And I also always thought that framing 715 as a 9/11 type attack was very smart. I mean, it's very straightforward. It is something we are all familiar with in one form or another. For those of us that are older, we remember the events of that day. For the younger folks, they've grown up in the shadow of it. So it's a very omnipresent event in our lives here, at least in the United States. Hello, international audiences. That we can all relate to, I think, internally. So I think framing the whole mutant assault, the reaction of society in that framework was always really smart. And of course, seeing the whole sequences and sort of the playback and moments. And oh my God, is that Ted on the TV? Did you guys catch that? That opening scene, when they're sitting around watching the TV, we pan to the television, all these firefighters moving, and in the background, there's a cop that looks just like Ted popping up in the scene. And we even had a moment of like this close-up on Reed's face, like, is this Reed now remembering that moment back then and still reflecting on the whole I just killed Ted thing? I had to rewind and rewatch it. Swear to God, that's Ted. And I think it'd be a smart way to do it, again, to sort of bring things around this big event that these truckers just watched and are now a part of. But like I said, really most of all of these flashback scenes were shown to set up Reed's sacrifice at the end. And I think they were a little too heavy-handed in it. I mean, again, it was, like I said, interesting to see the Struckers initially acting to 715, and then the call from Lauren at night, where she's panicking, wants to get picked up. There was a mutant attack, and of course, I believe we know that this was her as an attack, and later on the scenes, while Reed's trying to comfort her, almost to the point where Lauren is able to reveal that she was the mutant at the party. And yes, you're right about moving things on. I mean, it was very much like the "it's okay to be gay" type kind of fatherly speech, which again, nice, but obviously didn't open up the doors entirely so that Lauren felt comfortable really revealing that part of herself. As we know, that didn't come later. But each of these we have Reed talking about, I believe I have a special place in this fight, that I'm always here to protect you, that I'm willing to do what I can. At the same time as we are seeing him start to cascade with his powers, that he can't stop it anymore. It's not really in his control. So the whole Reed sacrifice at the end was, like I said, entirely predicted. I think by the second flashback I was like, oh, we're going to lose Reed by the end of this episode. Okay then. Oh, and there was a lot of discussion back in the comment section from last week talking about the reunion of the Strucker's family from last week. And Sophia Nunez had commented that it was really surprising that there wasn't a longer moment between Andy and Lauren finally kind of coming back together. And my thought last week was that, well, it's the emotional end of the scene. We're just trying to wrap things up. If there's going to be time for it, we will have it this week. And I was wrong. In an interesting way, we did have another interesting sort of Andy Reed connective moment, a little father-son moment right there. And I suppose with Reed leaving, they wanted to kind of add that extra layer to it. But yeah, there was no discussion between Lauren and Andy at any point. In fact, really the next time we see him, they're on the couch saying, well, if we're going to have to use our powers for good, then we're ready to do that. If we've got to blow up Riva's building, yeah, we're fine with that. I mean, and like, that was it. That was their whole kind of sorting things out. So I thought that was a little lacking also, I have to say. One surprising thing that did come out of this episode, I mean, there was a couple, but one is that apparently Riva has known where the mutant underground has been the entire time. When the Frost sisters come in and they're just like, yeah, they just went back, Andy and Lorna just went back to the underground. I guess they have spies there. They've been watching. They just got back. No real time has passed, so they already seem to know. And Riva just calls up Ryan, I've got a job for your purifiers. So, yeah, I think even with the discussion that she had with Reed at the end there, saying I've been keeping track of you and all this and that you've done, and you know you can't control your powers and all of this. It's like, oh, you've been watching these mutants the entire time and letting them cause trouble and haven't really just dealt with them. Okay, I guess that's overconfidence, and it's always gonna get you. It's always gonna get you. And I just want to say straight off, I don't care anymore about Jace Turner. I don't care if he sees the light. I don't care if he dies in his hospital bed. I don't care what happens to him. I am tired of his character waffling. He's a good guy. He's a bad guy. He's learning. He's not learning. He's seen the light. He's doing the same old things. That's all we've seen from him this entire season. So when he pops up there with the purifiers all vested up and armored and everything, and on the phone all military, and he's just like, I've been waiting for this. You know, you were just upset about shooting a kid like, I don't know, 12 hours ago. Admit, Ted being dead, you lose somebody you know, that's going to motivate you, but were he and Ted really that close? Anyway, at this point, I was so happy that John saw him and he was looking for his bit of revenge. I thought that was great. And that sort of leads us to our big John action pieces. The willingness to sacrifice self. I love this discussion with Marcos. He's already taken Blink from me. He's already, Clarice. He's already taken Clarice from me. He goes back and forth. There's nothing else that he can take. I got to appreciate that level of commitment there. I also love the whole 80s battle prep montage that we had between him and Jace. We've got John, he's putting on the makeup, he's getting his tomahawk, he's putting on his gear. We got Jace down there checking his guns, checking his thing. It was just this perfect kind of 80s action movie battle prep montage. It was just kind of a nice little guilty pleasure right there. As for John's couple of battle sequences, again, nicely done. This is stuff that television does very well. Combat. It's easy to do effects when you're not actually getting shot, and they can just use squibs, and you can just do reactions. I mean, from a budget standpoint, that was great. They still had some big throws. We had some big moves. I loved the Purifier shooting their own guy when he had to go into hand-to-hand, because bullets don't work all that great on Thunderbird right there. And how they trade back and forth. We're trying to do distance, but that doesn't work. We have to go in. That's where John can use them as shields or toss them, clean up. The chain sequence, that was awesome. And obviously bought enough time for the Struckers and Marcos and Lorna to get out of there to go and try and find the kids who were kidnapped by the Frost Sisters and Faye. Nice and convenient. Nobody else in the room. I know that Reed and Kate went down to get Kate's secret stash in the basement. I love that moment. Where'd you get all these? This is America. They sell these things. Just a little commentary on American culture right there. But they're laughing and coming up and then find the place empty. Marcos and John at that moment, I guess, were just checking the perimeter. Next room, is that where they... It was just, again, convenient. The Frost Sisters are able to show up with Fate and sort of pull Andy and Lauren out. But, again, that did feed some very interesting storyline and a whole little development on Esme's character, which we will get to. But yeah, I like that whole opening sequence, the whole fight with John against the Purifiers. Very well done. And then, of course, after that, willingness to die. A little bit of a surprisal arrival of Erg. I know we need to kind of sort, these two need to sort their issues out. And that was sort of a nice moment there where Erg is saying, this man took Clarice from you, took Blink from you. She wouldn't want you to die because of that. And supercharging Erg up by allowing John to punch him. He almost should have said, all that anger, let it out on me for a little bit. That was cool. And then John accepting his mutant name, much in the same way Clarice is accepted and chose Blink. John's, my name is Thunderbird. That was a very cool moment. And of course, John does get to have his sort of moment of revenge on Jace there. Almost kills him, but doesn't. Why? Because he's a good guy. Perhaps maybe Jace's last statement of, I'm ready to see my daughter. Kill me. If he's like, well, I don't want to give you something that you want. Because you're an ass. So, but again, it's the heroic turn not to kill. That's always that choice moment. But it was good to have that sort of healing moment between him and Erg. That kind of acceptance of where they're both coming from. Bonding a little bit over that loss of Clarice and able to sort of use that anger effectively against the people that deserve it, the Purifiers that killed her. Well, not really. Oh, and one thing, look, I love John coming out with his tomahawk and everything, but you throw your one weapon you have, you should hit. And he missed. It's like, why did you bring that out entirely out the first time? I mean, you can't take Jace out, I guess, with the one throw of the tomahawk there at the very beginning of the battle, but just the truck? Come on. Just don't throw your one weapon at that point, at least. And for this week's Scene of the Week, we have the destruction of Sentinel services. Look, I enjoyed John's action sequences. They were very cool. Very standard television, but well done. But seeing Fenris actually take out Sentinel services and seeing the whole effect was unexpected and super cool. Last season in the finale, Fenris used their powers, but we just saw the flashing light and then stories of the aftermath. We got to actually see it this episode, and surprisingly similar to Reed's power set in the sort of look and the way that it took out the building. I mean, I loved how they just, they got the hands together and they get their whole slow motion, super cool looking hair wave blowing action going on. and then sort of releasing that energy ball to the building, and then the whole disintegration. It was just, it's great use of effects. This is like what we want to see in finales, and this was an excellent use of it. And like I said, in a way kind of surprising. One, we got to see the whole thing now, and we didn't last year. But I was surprised that it happened at all, because we have been foreshadowing all of Esme's kind of turn against her sisters for most of this season, certainly the last half of it. And so I was expecting, with the whole scene ahead of time where we have Lauren throwing out the great line of, is this what mutant freedom looks for you? Mutants being forced to do things. I mean, it was a great scene where we got Annie and Lauren on their knees, just staring back up at Esme as the other Frost sisters are, you know, glowing eyes and getting on them. I was expecting, before the building went up, that Esme would turn and stop her sisters and so on. So the fact that she did step and help that, and we did see the destruction of Sentinel services, surprising and cool. The following scene, on the other hand, less cool. That is actually where we have the Struckers confront the Frosts, and we do have Esme turn. And it was just surprising, because I'm expecting another little battle or a change of the Frost to really like use their powers on the Mutant Underground. I know it's hard to let go of Lauren and Andy right there. But when Lorna walks up and just talks to Esme, I was expecting a battle there, but just uses, I mean, smart character-wise, use the story of their childhood being experimented on to sort of flip Esme and make her realize this is not something that she wanted to do. That's smart, just, again, not what I was expecting with this face-off encounter, was for Lorna to come up and talk. However, there's that cold side of Lorna as well, because as soon as she gets the sisters to go off, Marcos now, and laser bolt to the chest, down with the Frost sisters. Is that it? Are they dead? I think they're dead. They should be dead, but sometimes powers don't work that way. Sometimes death isn't the way that things sort of expect. Esme is like, I can't leave them. She's certainly ready to let them go and run off and do what they need to do at that point. I mean, just be with them in their final moments. There was hand moving. Maybe they're not totally dead. Maybe they were just dying at that moment. I don't know. I'm expecting that they're gone, especially the whole beautiful Esme scene, having Ryan turn around and confess with the reporters. That was awesome. That was a great way of turning things around and sort of wrapping up his contribution to the whole thing. But yeah, just again, just surprising, slightly disappointing, and really quick. Boom, Frost Sisters gone. No more troubles. Almost anticlimactic. But anticlimactic, in a way, was the whole final Reed face-off with Reva. Look, again, all heavily foreshadowed of what Reed was going to do. Even before they went into the building, it's, so stopping Reva will put an end to all of this? Okay, I mean, again, it's just talking about, I'm going to go in there and kill myself then in order to stop all of this. All of what Reed was doing this whole episode. The fact that she calls him the least impressive Strucker was kind of funny because, look, I kind of like Reed, but let's be awesome. The parents last season were sort of a pain in the butt. It was all about the kids. And Kate, well, she's always awesome. Amy Acker is incredible. She gets to be Root now, which is who I was hoping for. Root from previous show that she did. Person of Interest is the show's name. Anyway, I'm getting away from things. So, Amy Acker getting to be a badass, that's great to see. It was just funny that Reed, not my favorite Strucker, Reva calls him the least impressive one. Thought that was funny. The whole battle in the garage was kind of disappointing. Merely in the sense that I would expect Polaris, Marcos to be able to sort of wipe the floor with most of them. I like Kate shooting Fade. clearing that whole little rivalry up. That was awesome. But I don't know, it just seemed kind of a cheesy thing. All we have Polaris doing is she took out some lights, and I think she kind of threw a couple of things, and Marcos blew up the one thing in the guy's hand as he was throwing it. But good to see the evil mutants, the Inner Circle group, using their powers against. I love teleporting the missile up and having it explode right by them. That's an effective use of powers. But really, it felt like this is something that Polaris, at the very least, you are surrounded by cars, could have just smushed them all and crushed. I know she's not super Magneto power levels and stuff, but it just, again, it felt like what it was is a delaying tactic so that Reed had to go in by himself. We even get the cheesy discussion between he and Kate before he runs off about, oh, I can barely control my powers, I gotta do this, you gotta save the kids. Destruction going on all around, and yet they're fine to sit behind this crate and talk things out for a couple of minutes before running off. And then piece of cake for Reed to get in the elevator. Isn't that what everybody was trying to get to? Anyway, so that's, again, it wasn't a horrible fight sequence. It wasn't a horrible battle or anything. We did get to see some moments. It felt like a whole delay tactic right there. And then the encounter with Riva. Again, interesting in the fact that Reed can't control his powers anyway, so if she overloads him, that he could go ahead and just lose that control and blow up. And it was a great effect sequence. Again, spending money wisely. This is stuff that we want to see. When he blew and took out the building, that was all great when they got to it. But it seems like they spent like 2 minutes of Reed reacting and pushing down and crumbling this wall and standing back up and talking, and it felt super drawn out. Like I said, it started to be very anticlimactic at that point. So if it was a little tighter sequence, I think it would have held a little bit more. I loved seeing it all. I love the explosion. I love the effects. I love that we got that visual image. It just, little less cheese goes a long way. So, Reed is dead. I mean, it's a comic book show. How certain is any death, really, when you're doing that? Also, not a very survival-oriented power that kills you. Though we did the whole thing of suppression of power, and that energy was going to be released, and he certainly looked like he blew himself to tiny little bits and such. So, but the whole ending sequence does pretty much try to pound down the idea that Reed is dead, and now we have the family continuing the fight without him. And this is really where we get kind of to like the extra cheese on the nachos. Because, look, the producers don't know if this is the end. They certainly expect that this is the end of the broadcast series. Matt Nix, the show's creator, was talking about that himself. He is hoping that it is able to get picked up and continue on a streaming service. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm happy to be wrong. But it seems like they tried to play out this ending, for the most part, as if this is the end, with a tiny hint of possibly continuing forward. But again, we had the episode sort of opening up when we had Marcos and John talking about, you know, going through the mutant files, and God, most of these places don't exist anymore, and we're getting a shot of, you know, mutants that have been killed, and some of them are dead, and it's, you know, sort of the idea of like the old world is definitely gone. And we even hit it here at the end with Erg talking about there's mutants out there. Yes, Riva's dead, but the mutant uprising continues, and there's mutants out there that need our help. Well, the mutant underground is dead. Well, we'll just have to start up a new one. You know, it's this whole kind of rebirth. Yes, everything is over, but the story continues. We'll keep on the good fight. Lots of cheese, lots of intimation of change and possibilities and things to come. But really when it got down to Blink's arrival. And look, in concept, this was not surprising at all. They have certainly hinted the last several episodes. Even in here, we have John trying to track the Strucker kids and is just seeing Blink around, and therefore he can't really do much of anything. We knew she was going to show up. So the fact at the end when he's like, there's something outside, and runs out and we get to see the little powers and, you know, the blink colors start to pop up. It's like, yeah, she's gonna come out. And then, I'm serious, that is Back to the Future. That's the end of Back to the Future when Doc Brown reappears in the DeLorean saying, Marty, you gotta come with me. It's your kids, Marty. Not saying I do a good Doc Brown impression here, but you get exactly what I mean. We gotta go back to the future. Or, that's the camera. We gotta go back to the future. I gotta do it the right way. Anyway, when Blink walked out of there with the new hair and the looking badass, and she's got the little power, she can just throw and toss the portals there. I mean, again, looking cool, but that is years of study. She's from the future, different dimension, where time moves differently. Could be an entirely different Blink if they're doing larger universe dimensional travel and stuff. Who knows? But that was the Back to the Future ending right there with Blink's arrival. So, while her reappearance definitely would have been kind of just the emotional cherry on top of the sundae that they made, the fact that she's all futuristic get up and like, come on, there's something you need to see, we gotta go. It's like, okay, if the show continues, great, we got a whole new direction to go in. And if it doesn't, then it just, I guess, leaves off in that perfect comic book to be continued moment. Though, very, very cheesy. Alright, so I think that will wrap us up, not only for this review, but for this season of The Gifted. Possibly the entire show. We will have to wait and see for official notice. If it continues, I will be very happy to continue watching and reviewing the show for sure. I thought it was, cheesy as it was, and a little drawn out, I think a satisfying season finale. We did get some great action moments. We did get some wonderful visual set pieces. We did get to see some great effects explosions. We got some finality with Benedict being taken down and Reva being taken down and the inner circle pretty much gone. Yes, there's trouble. There's new troubles out there. There always are. But the immediate threats are set up. And of course, our team are now legends in the mutant community. I'm sure there's going to be a little backlash for Sentinel services, but you know, that's for the future to decide. But that does wrap us up for this show. Thank you so much for joining me, not only in this review, but all season long. Thank you so much for your comments, your reminders of things that I had forgotten. I do really appreciate that. And your ideas and insights, what you guys like about the show, what bothers you, all of that. This is fandom at its finest, when we can just share a show, agree, disagree with things, but still appreciate the whole experience together. That's what it's all about. And that's why I appreciate you guys joining me on these reviews oh so very much. And with that said, I'm going to have to say goodbye. Thank you so much for joining me. As usual, thoughts, ideas, and comments, please toss those down in the section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Share it with your friends. Catch me on Twitter and Instagram at DarrenJakes. Subscribe if you're still not a subscriber. We got a lot more shows coming up. We've got Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in May. We got American Gods starting up next month. We've got Walking Dead still going on. Oh, so much. Don't miss any of it. If you're a subscriber, you won't do it by hitting this button right here. And we'll throw up a couple of latest reviews right there for you to check out. So, that's going to be it for me. I'm D, and I'm out of here. Catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.